The room was silent, but the tension was deafening. The Galactic Council chamber was a massive, circular hall, its walls lined with glowing symbols of power from 1,000 worlds. At the center stood a towering hologram of Earth, slowly rotating in the dim light. Around it, the council members sat on their thrones, their alien faces cold and unreadable. They were the rulers of the galaxy, the most powerful beings in existence, and they had just delivered their verdict. Earth, the council leader's voice boomed, echoing through the chamber. You have one final chance. Surrender now, or face annihilation. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The council leader, a tall, reptilian creature with scales that shimmered like oil, leaned forward, his glowing eyes fixed on the human representative standing below. The man was small compared to the towering aliens, but his presence was undeniable. He wore a simple black suit, his face calm, his eyes steady. You have no choice, the council leader continued, his voice dripping with disdain. Your planet is weak. Your technology is primitive. You cannot win. The other council members murmured in agreement, their voices a mix of scorn and amusement. To them, Earth was nothing more than a speck in the vastness of the galaxy, a species barely worth their notice. The human representative took a deep breath and stepped forward. His voice was soft but firm, cutting through the silence like a knife. You are wrong, he said. The chamber fell silent. The council members stared at him, their expressions a mix of surprise and disbelief. We will not surrender, the man continued, his voice growing stronger. We will not bow to your tyranny. And if you choose to attack us, you will regret it. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, the council leader let out a low, rumbling laugh. The other members joined in, their laughter filling the chamber like a storm. Regret? The council leader sneered. You think we will regret crushing a species as weak as yours? You are nothing. You are less than nothing. The man didn't flinch. He simply stood there, his eyes locked on the council leaders. There was something in his gaze, something dark and unyielding, that made the laughter die down. You don't understand, the man said quietly. You think you're invincible. You think you can't be defeated. But you're wrong. And when the time comes, you'll see just how wrong you are. The council leader's smile faded. For the first time, there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Enough of this, he snapped. You have made your choice. Earth will be destroyed, and your species will be erased from history. This is your final warning. The man nodded slowly, as if he had expected this all along. So be it, he said. And with that, he turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the council members staring after him in stunned silence. As the doors closed behind him, the man allowed himself a small, grim smile. They had no idea what was coming. Beneath the surface of Earth, deep within a hidden facility, a group of scientists and leaders worked tirelessly. The room was filled with the hum of machines and the glow of monitors, but the atmosphere was tense. Everyone knew what was at stake. At the center of the room stood the artifact. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. A massive, glowing structure, covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as if alive. It pulsed with a strange energy, filling the air with a low, resonant hum. The artifact had been discovered years ago, buried deep beneath the Antarctic ice. At first, no one had understood what it was. But as they studied it, they began to realize its true power. We're running out of time, one of the scientists said, her voice tight with worry. The Council's fleet will be here soon. If we don't activate the artifact, it'll be too late. The leader of the project, a man with graying hair and tired eyes, nodded slowly. He had been working on the artifact for years, and the weight of it showed on his face. We have to be sure, he said. Once we activate it, there's no going back. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he meant. The artifact was powerful, but it was also dangerous. It had the potential to change everything, but it came with a warning. Use it wisely, the alien message had said. For it will change everything. No one knew who had created the artifact or why it had been left on Earth. But one thing was clear, it was humanity's only hope. The leader walked over to the artifact and placed his hand on its surface. The patterns beneath his fingers glowed brighter, and the hum grew louder. "We don't have a choice," he said quietly. "If we don't use it, we're dead anyway. At least this way, we have a chance." The others nodded, their faces grim. They knew he was right. "Activate it," the leader said. The scientists moved quickly, their hands flying over the controls. The artifact's glow intensified, filling the room with a blinding light. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls and the floor. And then, with a sudden burst of energy, the artifact came to life. The room was filled with a swirling vortex of light and sound. The scientists shielded their eyes as the artifact's power surged, sending waves of energy through the facility and beyond. For a moment, everything was chaos. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the energy subsided. The artifact's glow dimmed, and the room fell silent. The leader looked around, his heart pounding. "Did it work?" he asked. One of the scientists checked the monitors, her hands trembling. "Yes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's working." The leader let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. They had done it. The artifact was active. But as he looked at the glowing structure, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The artifact was powerful, but it was also unpredictable. They had no idea what it would do, or what it would cost. "We've bought ourselves some time," he said. "But this is just the beginning." The others nodded, their faces filled with a mix of hope and fear. They knew the road ahead would be difficult. But they also knew they had no choice. The artifact was their only hope. And they would use it to fight back. Far from Earth, in the heart of the galaxy, the council members celebrated. Their grand hall was a monument to their power and wealth. Towering pillars of crystal and gold reached toward the ceiling, which shimmered with a holographic display of the galaxy. The air was filled with the sound of music and laughter as the council members feasted on exotic foods and rare delicacies from 1,000 worlds. They had no fear. No doubts. To them, Earth was already defeated. "Did you see the look on that human's face?" the reptilian council leader said, his voice dripping with amusement. "He actually thought he could threaten us." The others laughed, their voices echoing through the hall. "They're so primitive," one of the council members, a sleek, insect-like creature, said. "It's almost sad. They don't even realize how outmatched they are." "They'll learn soon enough," another member, a towering figure with skin like molten rock, added. "When our fleet arrives, they'll beg for mercy." The council leader leaned back in his throne, a smug smile on his face. "Mercy?" he said. "No, we'll make an example of them. Let the rest of the galaxy see what happens to those who defy us." The others nodded in agreement, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. But not everyone in the hall was so confident. In a corner of the room, a young alien servant watched the council members with a mixture of fear and disgust. He had seen their cruelty firsthand, and he knew what they were capable of. But he also knew something they didn't. Earth was not as weak as they thought. The servant had overheard the council's communications, the reports from their spies and scouts. He had heard the whispers of a strange energy coming from Earth, something powerful and unknown. But when he had tried to warn the council, they had laughed at him. "You worry too much," the council leader had said. "Earth is nothing. They have no power. No weapons. No hope." But the servant wasn't so sure. As he watched the council members celebrate, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a terrible mistake. Meanwhile, on Earth, the mood was very different. The leaders and scientists worked around the clock, their faces grim and determined. The artifact was active, but it was unstable. Its power was immense, but it was also unpredictable. "We're running out of time," one of the scientists said, her voice tight with worry. "The Council's fleet will be here soon. If we don't figure out how to control the artifact, it'll be useless." The leader of the project nodded, his eyes fixed on the glowing structure. "We'll figure it out," he said. "We have to." But even as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The artifact was powerful, but it was also dangerous. They had no idea what it would do, or what it would cost. And then there was the warning. "Use it wisely," the alien message had said. "For it will change everything." The leader didn't know what that meant, but he knew one thing: they had no choice. The Council's fleet was coming. And they had to be ready. The Council's fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system, a massive armada of ships that blotted out the stars. They moved with precision, their weapons primed and ready. To the Council, this was not a battle, it was an execution. But they were wrong. Deep within Earth's hidden facility, the artifact pulsed with energy. The scientists and leaders watched as the monitors displayed the Council's fleet, their faces grim but determined. "It's time," the project leader said. The room fell silent as the artifact's power surged. The air crackled with energy, and the hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls and the floor. "Activate the weapon," the leader ordered. The scientists worked quickly, their hands flying over the controls. The artifact's glow intensified, and the room was filled with a blinding light. And then, with a sudden burst of energy, the artifact unleashed its power. In space, the Council's fleet was caught off guard. One moment, they were preparing to attack. The next, a massive wave of energy erupted from Earth, sweeping through the fleet like a tidal wave. The ship's shields flickered and failed, their systems overloaded by the artifact's power. The smaller ships were torn apart, their hulls crumpling like paper. The larger ships fared little better, their weapon systems disabled and their engines crippled. On the Council's flagship, the reptilian leader stared at the monitors in disbelief. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice shaking with rage. "How is this possible?" But there was no answer. The artifact's power was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. It was raw, uncontrollable, and devastating. Back on Earth, the scientists and leaders watched as the monitors displayed the chaos unfolding in space. "It's working," one of the scientists said, her voice filled with awe. "The artifact is working." But the project leader didn't share her optimism. He could feel the artifact's power, and he knew it was unstable. "We're not out of this yet," he said. "The Council's fleet is still out there. And the artifact, it's not going to hold forever." The others nodded, their faces grim. They knew he was right. The artifact was powerful, but it was also dangerous. And they had no idea what it would do next. In space, the Council's fleet was in disarray. The ships that had survived the initial wave were struggling to regroup. Their commanders were shouting orders, their voices filled with panic. "Fall back," one of them shouted. "Fall back and regroup." But it was too late. Earth's ships, powered by the artifact's energy, were already on the move. They moved with speed and precision, their weapons firing with deadly accuracy. The Council's ships were no match for them. One by one, the ships were destroyed, their hulls torn apart by Earth's weapons. The Council's fleet, once so confident and powerful, was now in full retreat. On Earth, the mood was a mix of relief and tension. They had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. The artifact's power was still unstable, and the Council was not going to give up so easily. "We've bought ourselves some time," the project leader said. "But this is just the beginning." The others nodded, their faces filled with a mix of hope and fear. They knew the road ahead would be difficult. But they also knew they had no choice. The artifact was their only hope. And they would use it to fight back. The artifact's power was growing unstable. In the hidden facility, the scientists and leaders watched as the monitors displayed the artifact's energy levels, their faces filled with worry. The artifact had given them a chance, but it was also a ticking time bomb. "We can't control it," one of the scientists said, her voice trembling. "The energy levels are spiking. If we don't do something, it's going to overload." The project leader nodded, his face grim. He had known this day would come, but he had hoped it wouldn't be so soon. "What are our options?" he asked. The scientists exchanged uneasy glances. "We can try to stabilize it," one of them said. "But it's risky. If we fail, the artifact could explode, taking us and half the planet with it. Or we can shut it down," another scientist added. "But if we do that, we lose our only weapon against the Council. They'll crush us." The room fell silent as the weight of the decision settled over them. On the Council's flagship, the mood was no less tense. The reptilian leader paced back and forth, his eyes blazing with fury. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "How could a primitive species like theirs have such power?" His advisors exchanged nervous glances. "We don't know," one of them said. "But whatever they're using, it's unstable. Our scans show the energy levels are fluctuating wildly. If we wait, it might destroy itself, and them." The leader stopped pacing and turned to face his advisors. "No," he said. "We can't wait. We need to strike now, while they're vulnerable. If we can capture their weapon, we can use it to crush the rest of the galaxy." The advisors nodded, but there was fear in their eyes. They had seen what the artifact could do, and they knew the risks. Back on Earth, the project leader made his decision. "We have to try to stabilize it," he said. "If we shut it down, we're dead anyway. At least this way, we have a chance." The others nodded, but there was no joy in their faces. They knew the risks, and they knew the cost. The scientists worked quickly, their hands flying over the controls. The artifact's energy levels were spiking, and the room was filled with the sound of alarms. "We're losing it," one of the scientists shouted. "The energy levels are too high." The project leader clenched his fists, his mind racing. They were running out of time. And then, suddenly, the artifact's energy surged. The room was filled with a blinding light, and the hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls and the floor. "It's overloading," one of the scientists screamed. The project leader closed his eyes, bracing for the end. But then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the energy subsided. The room fell silent. The project leader opened his eyes and looked around. The artifact was still glowing, but the energy levels had stabilized. "Did it work?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. One of the scientists checked the monitors, her hands trembling. "Yes," she said. "It's stable, for now." The project leader let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. They had bought themselves some time. But he knew it wouldn't last. The artifact was still unstable, and the Council was still out there. They had won a temporary victory, but the war was far from over. The Council's fleet regrouped at the edge of Earth's solar system, their ships battered but still formidable. The reptilian leader stood on the bridge of his flagship, his eyes burning with rage. "This ends now," he growled. "We will crush them, no matter the cost." His advisors exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared to argue. They had seen the artifact's power, and they knew the risks. But they also knew their leader's pride would not allow him to retreat. "Prepare the fleet," the leader ordered. "We attack at once." On Earth, the mood was tense but determined. The artifact's energy levels were stable, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the council struck again. "They're coming," one of the scientists said, her voice tight with worry. "And this time, they won't hold back." The project leader nodded, his face grim. "We'll be ready," he said. The battle began with a massive surge of energy as the Council's fleet launched their attack. Waves of missiles and energy beams streaked toward Earth, lighting up the sky like a storm of fire. But humanity was ready. The artifact's power surged, creating a massive energy shield around the planet. The Council's weapons struck the shield, sending ripples of light across its surface, but they could not penetrate it. "Return fire," the project leader ordered. Earth's ships, powered by the artifact's energy, launched their counterattack. The Council's fleet was caught off guard as waves of energy tore through their ships, destroying them in seconds. On the Council's flagship, the reptilian leader stared at the monitors in disbelief. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "How can they still fight back?" But there was no answer. The artifact's power was too much for the Council's fleet. One by one, their ships were destroyed, their hulls torn apart by Earth's weapons. The leader's flagship was the last to fall. As the ship's systems failed and the alarms blared, the leader sank to his knees, his face filled with despair. This cannot be," he whispered. But it was. The Council's fleet was gone, their power broken. Back on Earth, the mood was a mix of relief and sorrow. They had won, but the cost had been high. The artifact's energy levels were spiking again, and everyone knew it was only a matter of time before it overloaded. "We did it," one of the scientists said, her voice filled with awe. "We defeated the Council." But the project leader didn't share her joy. "This isn't over," he said. "The artifact is still unstable. And the Council, they were just the beginning." The others nodded, their faces grim. They knew he was right. The artifact was their only hope, but it was also their greatest threat. And they had no idea what to do next. The artifact's energy levels were spiking dangerously. In the hidden facility, the scientists and leaders watched as the monitors displayed the artifact's unstable energy, their faces filled with dread. The artifact had given them the power to defeat the Council, but it was also a threat to the entire galaxy. "We can't control it," one of the scientists said, her voice trembling. "If we don't do something, it's going to explode. The energy release could destroy Earth, and half the galaxy with it." The project leader nodded, his face grim. He had known this day would come, but he had hoped it wouldn't be so soon. "What are our options?" he asked. The scientists exchanged uneasy glances. "We can try to stabilize it again," one of them said. "But it's too risky. The energy levels are too high. If we fail, it'll be catastrophic. Or we can destroy it," another scientist added. "But if we do that, we lose our only weapon. The galaxy will be vulnerable." The room fell silent as the weight of the decision settled over them. On the Council's flagship, now adrift and powerless, the reptilian leader stared at the monitors in disbelief. "They're going to destroy it," he whispered. "They're going to destroy their only weapon." His advisors exchanged nervous glances. "If they do, the galaxy will be in chaos," one of them said. "Without the artifact, there's nothing to stop the other species from rising up." The leader nodded, his face filled with a mix of fear and awe. "They're sacrificing their power, for the greater good," he said. I never thought they were capable of such a thing." Back on Earth, the project leader made his decision. "We have to destroy it," he said. "We can't risk the galaxy. Not even for our own survival." The others nodded, but there were tears in their eyes. They had worked so hard to unlock the artifact's power, and now they had to let it go. "It's the only way," the leader said. "We have to do this, for everyone." The scientists worked quickly, their hands trembling as they entered the final commands. The artifact's energy levels were spiking, and the room was filled with the sound of alarms. "We're ready," one of the scientists said, her voice barely above a whisper. The project leader took a deep breath and nodded. "Do it," he said. The scientists activated the self-destruct sequence. The artifact's glow intensified, filling the room with a blinding light. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls and the floor. And then, with a sudden burst of energy, the artifact exploded. The explosion was massive, but it was contained. The artifact's energy surged outward in a wave, disabling all advanced technology in the galaxy. Ships lost power, weapon systems failed, and communication networks went silent. But the galaxy was saved. On Earth, the mood was a mix of relief and sorrow. They had lost their greatest weapon, but they had also saved the galaxy. "It's over," one of the scientists said, her voice filled with awe. "We did it." But the project leader didn't share her joy. "This is just the beginning," he said. "The galaxy is going to change. And we have to be ready for what comes next." The others nodded, their faces grim. They knew he was right. The artifact was gone, but its legacy would live on. And humanity would have to find a new way forward. The galaxy was quiet. The artifact's destruction had sent a wave of energy through the stars, disabling all advanced technology. Ships drifted powerless, communication networks fell silent, and the once mighty Galactic Council was no more. But from the ashes of the old order, a new one began to rise. On Earth, the mood was a mix of exhaustion and hope. The artifact was gone, but so was the threat it posed. The scientists and leaders who had worked so hard to save the galaxy now faced a new challenge: rebuilding. "We did it," one of the scientists said, her voice filled with awe. "We saved the galaxy." But the project leader didn't share her joy. "This is just the beginning," he said. "The galaxy is going to change. And we have to be ready for what comes next." The others nodded, their faces grim. They knew he was right. Across the galaxy, the other species were also struggling to adapt. The Council's defeat had left a power vacuum, and without their oppressive rule, the galaxy was in chaos. But it was also a chance for something new. On a distant planet, a group of alien leaders gathered to discuss the future. "The Council is gone," one of them said. "But we can't let their legacy define us. We have to work together to create a new order, one that's fair and just." The others nodded, their faces filled with determination. "Earth saved us," another leader said. "They sacrificed their greatest weapon to protect the galaxy. We owe it to them to build something better." Back on Earth, the project leader addressed a gathering of world leaders. "We've been given a second chance," he said. "But it's up to us to make the most of it. The galaxy is watching us. They're looking to us for guidance. And we can't let them down." The leaders nodded, their faces filled with resolve. "We'll work together," one of them said. "We'll rebuild. And we'll create a new future, for Earth and for the galaxy." In the months that followed, Earth became a beacon of hope. The other species looked to humanity for leadership, and Earth's leaders worked tirelessly to create a new galactic order. It wasn't easy, there were disagreements, setbacks, and challenges, but they persevered. And slowly, the galaxy began to heal. But the project leader knew the road ahead would be long. "We've come so far," he said to his team. "But there's still so much to do. The galaxy is counting on us. And we can't let them down." The others nodded, their faces filled with determination. They had saved the galaxy. Now, they had to build a future worthy of that sacrifice. Years had passed since the artifact's destruction. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The oppressive rule of the Galactic Council was a distant memory, replaced by a new order built on cooperation and mutual respect. Earth had become a symbol of hope, a testament to what could be achieved when species worked together. But for the project leader, now an elder, the memories of those dark days were still fresh. He stood on a balcony overlooking a bustling city, his eyes fixed on the stars. The city below was alive with light and sound, a testament to humanity's resilience and determination. "It's hard to believe how far we've come," he said to a young alien standing beside him. The alien, a representative from one of the many species now allied with Earth, nodded. "We owe it all to you," the alien said. "Your sacrifice, it changed everything." The elder shook his head. "It wasn't just us," he said. "It was everyone. The scientists, the leaders, the people who refused to give up, and the artifact. We were just a small part of something much bigger." The alien smiled. "Maybe," he said. "But you showed us what was possible. You showed us that even in the face of impossible odds, we can still choose to do what's right." The elder nodded, his eyes filled with pride. "That's the lesson," he said. "True power isn't about technology or domination. It's about unity, courage, and the willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. That's what saved us. And that's what will keep us moving forward." In the city below, a young alien child looked up at the stars, her eyes filled with wonder. "What are you looking at?" her mother asked. "The stars," the child said. "I want to see them up close someday. I want to explore the galaxy, just like the humans did." Her mother smiled. "You will," she said. "And when you do, remember the story of Earth. Remember what they did for us." The child nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I will," she said. On the balcony, the elder turned away from the stars and looked at the city below. "We've come so far," he said. "But there's still so much to do. The galaxy is counting on us. And we can't let them down." The alien beside him nodded. "We won't," he said. "Not as long as we remember the lesson." The elder smiled. "Then the future is in good hands," he said. And as the stars twinkled above, the galaxy moved forward, united by a shared purpose and a shared hope. The artifact was gone, but its legacy lived on, not in its power, but in the lessons it had taught. True power lies not in domination, but in unity. Not in fear, but in courage. And not in destruction, but in the willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. That was the lesson. And it was a lesson the galaxy would never forget.